A voice from the grave. Well, not exactly, but it's close. Almost 1 year after former Beatle George Harrison died, Brainwashed, an album he left behind, has just made its way into stores. Thanks to his son Dhani and former bandmate Jeff Lynne, who both join me now from London, England. Good morning, gentlemen. First, Jeff, I'll start with you. There might be some people watching who aren't familiar with the technical aspects of doing an album like this. Give us an indication of what George had left and what you guys needed to do. I mean, when we talk about production, literally, what did you guys need to do?
Basically, what we needed to do to the songs were complete. Whatever George had sung was complete. All we did was enhance little bits with some vocal backing, Dhani and myself. Acoustic guitars, we helped and added a couple of those to some of the songs. And, you know, basically the songs were finished, but just weren't tidied up, like weren't made into a record that you would say is a record. They were basically demos, and George had asked me before he was, before he was really ill, to come and help and do it at my house, and we were going to do it. But then he got too sick, and he did actually say to me once on the telephone, "Now I don't want these too posh, you know. I want them like still like demos."
He left you instructions.
Yeah, he did. He left us instructions. He also left us things like string parts that he'd sung onto the tape for us to play, and Mark Mann wrote them into a concise piece of music from just the singing on the tape. And so we do have strings on there, but that's the only really the only sort of posh stuff on there, if you like. It's George with his guitars and his voice, and that's the main components of the record.
How difficult, Jeff, was it to make those decisions? How much pressure did you feel, being not only someone who produced the album, but a close friend and a collaborator of George's?
Well, on one hand, I felt equipped to do it because I knew George so well, and musically we were very much on the same wavelength, and I knew him, and Dhani knew whatever I didn't think of, Dhani would know. And, so Dhani stopped me going overboard with anything, and which was a great help to have Dhani there, because anything I might have, gone too far my way or made it sound like me, I didn't want it to sound like that. Dhani didn't want it to sound like him. And we both wanted it to sound like George, and I think we achieved that.
Did you guys ever disagree in the studio over a decision?
For about 3 seconds.
Yeah, with the rubber hammer.
With the rubber hammer, and we had to work on Mouse Boy a bit, but other than that...
A little bit.
Yeah. No, I don't think we did.
Not really.
If I had something that Jeff didn't agree with initially, after I'd explained it, we either, by the time I'd finished explaining it, realized that we were going to use it, or that I'd had a bad idea in the first place. So, the way we worked was it was either rubbish and we chuck it out, or it's really good and it keeps in. There was no compromising, and anything, it either sounded perfect like Dad for the record, or it was something that wasn't going to work and we didn't use it. So, we were very conscious about that, and we never had a disagreement. We always, within, a couple of seconds really, had just worked out what the right thing for the record was.
Mm-hmm.
And it was pretty obvious what the right path that my dad and the record, should have taken.
I can't help but think that if you're following the instructions of someone who's passed on, you're recording his songs and listening to his voice, you must have felt him in the studio. You must have felt his presence.
Of course, yeah. At first, it was quite hard, and like the first couple of tracks, we were really kind of just treading new ground. And then once we'd done a couple, we felt George actually is with us, and there's his voice to prove it. So, we started to enjoy it much more, because there George was with us, and we were making the thing, and it sounded really good, and it started to sound great, and we were very happy, making all the tracks.
Dhani, did you feel him there?
Yeah, I mean, whenever his music's around, there's always so much of him that's just been completely contained, I don't know, sustained in all of his tunes, you know, and I feel it when we do the rehearsals for this concert, and I feel them when we do, you know, when we were in the studio doing the additional recordings, you know, wherever his music goes, there is a very strong...
It's been almost a year since his death. You can't help but think that as his son, that this might in some way help you get through this.
What, being interviewed?
No, I'm thinking about doing the album.
Oh, right, yeah, no, the album was very...
I mean, I'm happy if the interview helps.
Yeah, no, yeah, we can talk later. The album was very cathartic for me. I think it was, you know, as I said, it was done at the right time, so it was... I dealt with a lot of this, you know, as it happened, and never really shied away from any of the reality of what's, you know, what's been happening in the last few years. And doing the recordings, it was, you know, it was great and wonderful, and it was really sad as well. And you know, now I play them the album, and some people who knew him, you know, they'll just cry hearing tracks on the record and look at me like I'm crazy because I'm not crying. And it's like, well, I've done all that, you know, and I went through it when we did the record, and it was a very, you know, positive thing for me to have done so soon after his death.
It sounds like you say the Devil in the Deep Blue Sea, it brings smiles to people's faces when they hear your dad playing with the ukulele, because that's the way he was, just kind of walking around and singing around the house.
Yeah, we're everywhere, you know, in the car, on the plane. I've seen him play, you know, ukulele to people in first class on a British Airways flight. I've seen him do it everywhere, you know, wherever he went, he'd always have one in his bag.
Jeff, did he ever talk to you about what he intended or what he wanted his legacy to be? You know, musically or otherwise, the way he led his life?
He never actually said what he wanted his legacy to be. Now, I think George just wrote songs that were very meaningful, and I think what he said in his words, all his songs, are just great messages, very wise and loving, you know, and a little bit naughty sometimes, just, you know, just for the fun of it. But basically, he believed in love and God. That's what I always got from him.
Dhani, a lot of people don't know you. Your father was known as a very private man, and I think that most would agree that he was very successful in sheltering you from a lot, not all, but a lot of the media storm that surrounded him as a former Beatle. I guess, and you're only 24, so it's hard to look back on your life, but tell me about your parents' efforts to try and shelter you from that. Did you ever feel stifled?
No, I think it's a brilliant thing. You know, I don't think anyone should be forced to be a public figure just because they're born into a family of people who are recognized in the media. I mean, you know, it's one thing if they then go on to have a career or do something that's worth something or has merit, you know, or they even just want to be famous. Even then, people can be famous just because they want to be. That's fine as well, in a way. But, you know, I'm happy that my parents have, you know, forced me, not even forced me, just steered me in the direction of privacy rather than the public eye, because, you know, as not many people know, it's, you know, it's not all great being followed and chased and everything, and it's nice to be able to go down the street and have your privacy, something that my dad never had, you know. And I really have seen it from an early age, just how...
You've had to cope with paparazzi,
yeah,
haven't you?
You know, not even that, just even old ladies coming up to you in the street. You know, it's everyone. It's, you know, policemen, you know, it's, you know, anything.
Is it true that you were watching TV with your dad at one point when his death was announced?
Yes, that was, I think, on CBS or NBC, Dateline or something. I saw it twice, actually. You know, good old trustworthy.
How did your dad react? I mean, as you're sitting there and you're watching TV and hearing that?
He laughed.
Did it put a bad taste in your mouth, or did you just laugh as well?
I don't know. I mean, yeah, I mean, we all laughed. I mean, but it's not. It's a, you know, it's all fun and games until you have to call every single relative that you've ever known and every friend of yours and tell them you're not dead, and they're all crying.
Yeah.
You know, that's not fun. But you know, it's good for a laugh.
What about now? Well, your dad left you everything. You're 24 years old. You're in charge of an estate of a former Beatle. Are you feeling the weight of that? How do you manage? How do you manage with that? Because materially speaking, that's a big responsibility. You know, not to intimidate you.
It's only in the letting go that we can attain everything.
Are you happy at the end of the day now? Well, I mean, you must be happy. The reviews for the albums are saying it's an incredible epitaph to your father. It's some of the best work that George Harrison has ever done. Are you happy with those reviews?
Yeah, I think we
Yes.
are. You know?
Very.
Yeah. We put a lot of hard work into this, and it's
Yeah.
our gift to people, so I'm glad if people like it. That's good. That's what we want, you know?
That's right. That's all we can ask for, is for people to hear it, actually. People to get to hear it.
And you've got the big tribute concert organized, Ringo Starr, Paul McCartney, Eric Clapton.
Well, it's Eric's concert. Eric actually is the boss of the concert. And Dhani and myself are playing on it. And we're having a great time rehearsing, actually, doing all George's great songs.
A lot of chords. A lot of chords to
Millions of
learn.
chords. There's some very complex songs there, and yet the melody is so beautiful and simple. But what underlies them is these fantastic array of chords that you have to learn every 12 seconds.
Dhani, is this the future for you now? Will you stay in the music industry, or is this a one-off, you know, you simply did to keep your father's memory alive and to demonstrate his work?
I'm not a big fan of the music industry, but I love music, and you know, if and when I ever do anything that I would think is good enough to release, then maybe I'll release it. But you know, I'm a perfectionist, so I wouldn't dare do anything that I wasn't happy with, and I don't plan to be famous, so maybe.
Would it be fair to say you're a chip off the old block, somebody who likes music, who's a perfectionist, who has no real plans to become famous?
Probably. Yes. Yes, I think you probably...
He's definitely
you're
a
right there.
chip. He's definitely a chip. He's a wedge up the old block.
Jeff, would you call him a chip off the old block too, though? I mean, you've worked with both Harrisons.
That's true, yeah. Danny's is his own guy, you know, even though he's only 24. And he's very much like George in lots of ways. His wit and just the fun, you know, the fun things that we do. Very silly, but also very serious.
Dhani, Jeff, thanks very much for talking to us.
Thank you, Seamus. She loves you.
Thanks, Seamus.
There's much more to come on Canada AM, so stay with us.
My name is Kim. I'm a new